These things are a lot more fun when they actually work. Hey, is my sound all screwed up? These things are a lot more fun when they actually work. No, it isn't. Good. What is up, everybody? This is Jay, aka MultimediaJay, waiting for YouTube to start complaining at me because I am running the audio. I manually am overriding the audio bitrate cap on OBS at 320 kilobits per second, which is double YouTube's max of 160. I just want to see what this does to the sound quality thing, and also see if I want to apply it to games and things along those lines. So it's one of those things where I got rid of the Logitech G software so that this thing could stop doing this fake surround in my headphones, which was causing all kinds of problems earlier. And what I'd like to do is basically just get stereo in here and let the software do any virtual effects they want. I want the sound to match what's going out on the stream. So virtual surround is off the table. I mean, if the game wants to do things in stereo, but do something like Dolby Pro Logic, then cool. But as it stands, getting rid of the software nerfed the sound quality of this thing just a little bit. And I really don't have a good bass treble or EQ in OBS. How the heck does OBS not have an EQ plugin after all this time? I'm going to go search for one at some point later on. But yep, I cleaned out the triggers in my X-Bone controllers, and, well, let's try not to be too far all around the map with this. Welcome to the Late Night Nerd Lounge, aka this audio experiment, waiting for YouTube to complain about me like they do if I set the video bitrate too high. And we'll see how this goes and what this sounds like compared to prior chat streams. The way I have it structured right now is that the last load of laundry just started spinning in the dryer. I think I can get this discussion done before the jeans finish drying. Then we finish the laundry, and then we fire up some Forza, and we pick up where we left off with the progression in that game for play some stuff, probably after midnight my time. So I want to come on here. It's 10:39 right now. I just want to have a little bit of a discussion about what's going on with consoles, because there's a lot that's going on with that. First off, though, there might be some loud trucks, there might be some loud motorcycles, and there might be some kabooms and explosions that make it through the noise filters into the stream audio because it's fireworks night. My town is one of the last towns in this area. I don't know if we postponed it or not. One of the last towns in the area to do 4th of July fireworks, and tonight was a gorgeous night for it. The towns all do this on purpose. They have a regular date and a rain date, and they spread out their fireworks displays. Let me just tell you a little something about 4th of July fireworks out in my neck of the woods here. Everybody knows, who knows anything about business or about entertainment or recreation or whatever, the fireworks are not a 4th of July thing. Fireworks are a commercial thing that draws crowds. You don't need the 4th of July for a publicly advertised fireworks display to attract a big crowd. I dealt with this growing up with baseball games at minor league ballparks. Whenever there was fireworks, the traffic would be backed up all the way to the highway. That's what forced the ballpark, in conjunction with the towns, to basically come up with a better plan for routing traffic to and from the ball field, because every time there was fireworks, I don't know what it is about kabooms, explosions, and bright colors, but those things draw crowds big time. Years ago, in the middle of the last decade, my dad and I went to Dodd Stadium in Norwich, which had a team back then. I don't know if they even still do, with the minor league contractions and stuff going on. But one of the things that they were doing to get people out to the ball games was basically firework Fridays. Friday nights would be fireworks. You're like, yep, there's going to be traffic. And there always was. But hey, it was pretty fun. You know, even though it was an old ballpark with the PA in sad shape, half the stuff the announcer said sounded like I was like, this place has seen better days, man. So it's a bit of a road trip to get there, but we went to a few games when I was growing up and decided to, one last time, have a father-son outing one night. The weather was not unlike this weather, though. Gorgeous evening, low humidity, 60s and 70s. You know, whenever it's like this now, you can almost like smell the popcorn and the hot dogs. You wonder when you're going to hear the crack of the bat and there's going to be a foul ball to chase and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's... But fireworks draw crowds, even when it's not the 4th of July. So when it is the 4th of July, things get noisy and things get rowdy. because I know Connecticut has everything outlawed except sparklers and fountains, but people find a way to get some fireworks that boom on you and scare all the pets in the neighborhood. Regardless, it's just nature. It's the nature of the beast when it comes to America and the 4th of July. I just joked about something on Twitter. It was actually Dr. Eric Ding, one of the folks who is very, very aggressive towards COVID that I follow on Twitter. I did an Allstate insurance parody joke. He actually shared something. He was making a point about, self-responsibility doesn't do the job well enough, blah, blah, blah. He was showing a video of a firework mishap where someone had a dud not even take off and explode on the ground. And one of the things that blew out of it set off all the fireworks in their van. And it's, like scared everyone away. We don't really see what the aftermath of that home security camera footage was, but fireworks, look, I'll just go to like a town display or something. Around here, there's really no reason to risk any kind of fire danger with fireworks around here, 4th of July or not. The way the towns do it, the local business communities buy into some of it, and then there's also vendors that get licensed to, have little like patriotic kitchen stuff that they're selling, stupid little souvenir thingies like, blinky like glow stick things or something like that with a big American flag on it. It's just stupid. It's just like, it's exactly the kind of overpriced souvenirs that the kids will bug the heck out of their parents. I want one, I want one, I want one. Even in this day and age of Amazon and being able to just buy that stuff on a whim. Oh, you want one? We'll just buy one on Amazon. No, I want one now. Can imagine kids these days, Look, history has its way of repeating itself. I imagine even in today's internet days, there's still, kids prone to impulse purchases and twisting mommy and daddy's arm into buying something for them at these stupid things. But yeah, there's always a big commercial element to it. We know it attracts people. Then there can be vendors that sell. There can be networking. There can be other publicity type things as we celebrate the 4th of July. There is as much business going on in this patriotic observance of Independence Day here in the United States, in my corner of the woods, as there is, there's as much business going on as there is, observing Independence Day. That's where I'll leave it at. So the towns basically pick days, like almost no 4th of July fireworks days are actually on the 4th of July. So they pick days from up to 2 days before to up to a week afterwards. So if you're in a particularly patriotic mood and you plan out an itinerary with your smartphone and you know where to go every single night, you can go to like 4, 5, 6 different fireworks around the 4th of July. Get your fill of fireworks for the year just from those displays and be done with them. So we just had ours. It's our turn on the list, and I think this might be it. We might be either one of the last or the last towns to do it. But the thing is, there's still some people with a couple of things in their shed that they might be shooting off, even though it's the middle of the night. Fireworks have aftershocks like earthquakes, so to speak. You'll get the main display, the boo 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 boo, and they're like, well, I got a few of them sitting around here. Let's crack a few beers after all that. Shoom! Boom, 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 boom. I feel sorry for people's pets around here. Whatever. Anyways, so yeah, there might be some noise if anybody else sets off any more fireworks. I hope the neighborhood is quieted down. But yeah, anyways. This thing works. It's awesome. It's awesome. I fixed the sticking triggers. It's like new. And I also upgraded the battery pack to the other one that I use with the series controller. It was pretty easy of a repair. I didn't make a video about it because you can see videos about this everywhere. It's literally just pry off the plastic ends and get an alcohol swab and get all the gunk out that gets under the trigger. This one I haven't used in a while, but once you get the triggers moving, they're fine. I think this one might be a good one to go to the project area, and I'll bounce between, or if I get like a second player or something, and I'll just bounce between X-Bone controller and series controller, which you can tell because that one's not reflective with the X thing, or should I? Well, wait, it is. Yeah, there we go. Okay, stop playing with controllers. So I got this fixed, and this is anyways, series a lot more solid a lot more solid, but I'm not buying a second one of these because at some point I want to get an Xbox Series X if those things are ever effing available. The Series S is available, but I want something with an optical drive to play Blu-ray movies. So it's the successor to the PlayStation 3 that I've been running into the ground. Blu-ray on PC is a failure, so I want a successor to the PlayStation. I want a successor to the PlayStation 3 for this kind of stuff. So it's great that this works again. This is like new. It's like cleaning a Nintendo cartridge, actually. Actually, there's a lot of gunk that gets on the connector. I thought it was the rubber disintegrating. Because of how old it is. But I take the covers off, I get in there, and I'm like, yeah, this had a lot of gunk on it from like lots of playing Forza, and then it sat for months, and rinse, lather, repeat until the triggers got stuck. So not that hard of a maintenance thing, but it's definitely something where I just want to do more comparison between these two as to what's what and stuff along those lines. But the Series controller, I can tell you, is absolutely solid. Absolutely solid. So it's so tempting to just go get a second one of these. But the thing is, I want to get a Series X at some point if they ever get back in stock. If I ever want to get one, that's the issue too, because Monolith is fine for games. Doing things at 1080p, I wouldn't actually benefit from a Series X unless I could do 1080 60 mode with really nice graphics. See, that's the question that I have with consoles. That's the question that I have with consoles is quite simply, what do they correspond to in terms of settings on PC? So we can get past all the marketing language. We talked about this last time, but what settings they correspond to? Yeah, you sell me a 4K console with some nice hardware in it. What does it really do? Will I be able to surpass that in a couple of years with my systems, especially if I eventually get something that does 4K 120 and upgrade my TV? Now, I'm staying 1080 for the time being. The other thing to remember too is power consumption. Takes less resources to do 1080. So you want a system that properly ramps up and down. You're going 1080. Sorry. It's just 1080 at some screen sizes is just going to be perfectly fine. I mean, all you're really doing is, you're just trading what you could do with anti-aliasing for a higher resolution, which is something we used to do back in the tube monitor days. We used to crank the resolution and turn off the anti-aliasing for better performance, but then you had to wonder about the trade-offs between no anti-aliasing, high res, or lower res with anti-aliasing, and your graphics card pretty much determined all of that. But it's nice that these controllers work again, work like new again. And it's great that they're so easy to maintain and gives me some practice for whenever this one gums up and needs to be cleaned. So, that's the other Xbone. This one gums up and needs to be cleaned. Well, why can't he get off of this controller thing? He's just like all controllers and stuff. Because I've been playing keyboard and mouse games for the last couple of years with Elder Scrolls Online. Look, I've been playing keyboard and mouse games for a long time. To get back in a good old-fashioned controller experience and know that the muscle memory and stuff that I'm developing by using these Xbox controllers is exactly that I would have on the actual Xbox. There is no difference. So I'm kind of sort of, just providing my own hardware for the rendering and running the games as opposed to buying an Xbox. It's cool stuff. I wish that Sony did something like this. I'd love to try the DualSense. But one of the reasons why we're here today is main topic. Consoles shouldn't repeat the mistakes of the Ouya. I've been looking at a lot of the stuff I said 10 years ago, specifically about whether consoles had a future or not. Keep in mind, this is the era of the Xbox 360, the PS3, and the Wii U. Or actually, the Wii U is going to catch up to the PS3 and stuff. So roughly that power level for consoles. Consoles were basically 720p gaming devices back then. So the question was, without having seen the PS4 and the Xbox One yet, were consoles going to be able to pull off an actual hardware improvement to get anywhere close to PC? Because the system I had at the time, Tuxedo, could do 1080p 30. So my question was, what would happen, in terms of frame rate and in terms of resolution? Eventually, I gained the ability to do 1080 60 in some games with some of the upgrades that I was doing at the time. So the question was, what was going to happen with consoles? The answer, of course, was consoles didn't make it. They were using cheeseball resolutions like 900p or something and then upscaling it. They just couldn't do what computers were doing. And some of them cost about as much as computers at the time, too, for their introductory prices. But it was a different world back then. I've been revisiting some of these discussions. And that's where we get to the discussion about MultimediaJay RadioStyle, my old podcast. Those of you that follow along with these streams know that the chat streams are not doing what I want them to. And it's this thing where I'm constantly in this tug of war between showing up with something to talk about and then seeing if people talk about anything in the chat. And then wondering if the chat's just trying to hijack everything if they go too far from the original discussion that I had planned. The way to solve that, of course, is to get back into podcasting. Just make something about the topic and record with Audacity and actually have it editable and not have to worry about situations where I circle back to points I've already made or something like that, because this is all impromptu. Plus, the RadioStyle name has pull with the search engines. You can search for MultimediaJay RadioStyle and actually get results, similar to Play Some Stuff. It has pull with search engines and other stuff. In other words, Google systems already know what it is. So I've been looking at various ways to modernize the format, so that way it could have something resembling a podcast without it looking like something that would now be found in YouTube's content ID system, or something that like a radio station doesn't know anything about YouTube. If you've seen videos of radio stations putting up killer clips and segments from their on-air talent, it can get pretty plain and boring. And so I've been tossing around a few ideas regarding modernizing the format and doing more with audio in that respect. I also have access to better sound quality when I'm pre-recording things, because I can bust out Audacity and I can add the thing is, there are some effects in OBS, but not all of them. And they don't work as well as one would like. So because everything has to be crunched live in real time, if there's a CPU hiccup, it can cause glitches with the audio and things like that, which is what I was talking about with the bad Skype call thing last time. I don't want that sound for what I do at all. I've been comparing the chat streams to the podcasts that I used to do, and I think there would still be a home for podcasts, both in terms of content and as well as delivery as well. So it could sound a lot more like something on the radio. And we know that the chat streams have been going in that direction, where I often show up with something to talk about that should be its own thing. Great example. And then we have to consider video essays as well. Video essays are driven by narrative. They're driven by what's being said. So video essays are going to once again cause this conflict that we see with chat streams, where I can show up, talk about the news of the day, or respond to something quickly. It's pretty easy to do. But if I want something that's more of a formal response, that's more evergreen, that's worth recording. That's actually worth recording and making into something. Again, this whole crafting something thing that isn't present with streams. I can tell you, as much as I've had fun hybrid streaming these things, podcasts will have an edge over them simply because of the edit button and the ability to decide what I want to talk about in what order and make it compact, so to speak. And listening to some of the radio style commentaries from earlier, they do sound higher quality than what OBS is capable of doing. And even what I was capable of doing with Logitech G if I sacrificed my sound for game streams. Logitech G, though, had some more glitches in it and stuff, similar to what I get when I use OBS. So it sounded cool in terms of having EQ and stuff, but too much software just creates more potential for sound glitches and more potential for latency that throws off the sync of the audio and the video. So it's just something that we have to take a very close look at and then see what we want to do about with this kind of stuff. But yeah, I have a couple of things in mind. Some of them will be continuing discussions I had 10 years ago about PC versus console. I also want to test this out, and this will probably be the best way to do this. I also want to test this out by having the out of continues episodes that I was on in the 2010s turned into some kind of best of thing. Out of Continues was a podcast about video games. Staffa did it, posted up on Mondays and stuff. He discontinued it a couple of years ago. A while back, I went and I actually asked him on Twitter if I could have permission to re-upload the shows that I was on as a guest. So I'm thinking some kind of best of for that as a way of testing out modernizing the radio style format, and then make a decision as to what should be podcasted and what should be made into a chat stream, or what to even reserve the chat streams for. Harris Heller, for example, if I posted something on the community page of him showing off his glorious $500,000 multimedia basement setup, essentially. This guy's got a studio in a house he built, and it is designed very much for what he wants to do and the way he wants to do it. It's a really nice setup. He did a tour video about it. I think that and hardware really should be, I mean, he's got a great place to shoot videos similar to what I do. Question is, will he? You know, tech videos are in a rut on YouTube. And then there's always the pressure. Do you want to be another Linus clone, or do you want to tell an ongoing story? I think Harris has an incredible setup that would be great for an ongoing story. But I think it would be great for him as well if he focused on hardware and his setup as opposed to commentary and stuff. Some of his stream commentaries, I mean, I took a look the other day. His discussion about the Twitch ad system was a little off. And I did a response to that as well. But he's definitely got some cool things going on. Thing is, though, what I want to do is I want to podcast essentially a few things and then chat stream some other things. Now, if I go by what Harris says, though, about what streams should be, chat streams should just be hanging out and see if people are talking in chat. I've been showing up like I'm doing a radio show. Show up with something to talk about and then see if anyone says anything. But if nobody says anything, then what do you do? Or if it starts going in a different direction, then what do you do? It's just not really the sort of thing that I've really, it's not the sort of thing that I've really been able to hammer down. And the sort of thing that sometimes leaves me wondering if something else would have been better. And that's really what we've been doing this year as well as in 2021 and 2020, finding out what's good for what, with streams versus videos, and then with other stuff that's going on as well. And the various things I want to do on here. So this channel's always been a variety channel. And there are some people that would say that I have no chance because variety is dead. Well, if that's the case, if you can't be yourself on this platform, if you can't have fun on this platform, what's the point of YouTube even existing? Because as much as YouTube may try to get away from the you part of that brand name, they can't. There's already a video platform that is 100% commercial. User-generated stuff is pushed off to the side. It's called Daily Motion. And they haven't exactly been doing well over there. Since the last time they were acquired, it just hasn't been working out all that well. And I believe view counts are gone. So there's a like button. That's it. There aren't even views on the videos anymore. Nice to do that when your front page content was only getting 5,000 views. I think Daily Motion size-wise is probably about the size of Twitch. Yeah. And they don't even have a strong brand in a certain area to go off of. It's not like Twitch with gaming that can carry the platform and attract more people who want to be some kind of streamer on there. No. Daily Motion is basically YouTube, but it's the size of Twitch. What do you do with that? All right. Consoles shouldn't repeat the mistakes of the Ouya. If you know what the Ouya is, you know what I'm talking about. Little Android console from the 2010s. I had some various conversations, and these are some of the things I want to revisit with the revamped RadioStyle, modernized RadioStyle format that I'm tossing around ideas for right now. One of the things I want to do is I want to follow up on things I said 10 years ago and kind of just expand the story. This is going to be one of them, not necessarily about, console versus PC, but about Ouya, especially in light of what's going on with stuff like the controller situation today and what's locked down and some of Microsoft's decisions and of consumer friendliness. Who does it? And is it really worth it for these hardware companies? Title of the stream, Consoles Shouldn't Repeat the Mistakes of the Ouya. What were those mistakes? Some of those mistakes were more obvious than others. But if I go over to Wikipedia, do some moron research, so to speak, turn on dark mode in Google Chrome. So the Ouya was a little Android console, technically 8th generation, $100, and it ran Android Jelly Bean, of all things, ran off NVIDIA Tegra 3, 1.7 gigahertz quad core, 1 gig of DDR3 with 8 or 16 gigs of flash memory, depending on which version of it you bought. Could do up to 1080p, but with those kinds of settings, who knows? with that kind of hardware, who knows? The Ouya was a great example of the problems that existed with the tail wagging the dog in industry. It's just a wonderful, wonderful example. Because the Ouya, when it was announced and when it was crowdfunded, solved a problem that existed at the time with consoles. Consoles were turning too much into walled gardens with their online stores. And so the idea of the Ouya was supposed to free the games. It was supposed to free gaming in general, so you didn't have to buy an expensive console to get into it. So it would be easy and affordable to get an Ouya. And then all the games would be free to play. Of course, there'd be ways, think like a shareware console or something like that. All the games would be free to play. So there wouldn't be a lot of the crap that goes on with Xbox and PlayStation at the time. The problem that every single company that makes this mistake, the problem with literally every single company that makes this mistake, is that when you are the tail that wags the dog, what about the dog? When your product exists to solve a problem that the incumbents are creating with their behavior, what do you do when the incumbents just do an about face and fix their problems? That's fundamentally what happened to the Ouya. There were a lot of problems with the Ouya. First, and a lot of these things are warnings to, I would say, consoles, but also mobile, but definitely consoles. Well, Ouya is no longer a thing. The hardware was a commercial failure, and then the software assets were eventually sold to Razer, who basically closed the book on it. It's now the Ouya is now a piece of history, essentially. So here's the thing. What were the mistakes of the Ouya? The big one I want to focus on is that the Ouya was making like PC gaming didn't exist. Julie Ehrman, CEO at the time, had this very boisterous speech that all these years later, I still very vividly remember the comments on. One of the comments, very, very to the point, was like, it's amazing how this woman will do anything to not admit that PCs exist. And yeah, we're talking 2012, 2013. The console killer PC guide from Tech Syndicate was like a 2013 thing or so. The AMD Kaveri was going to become a thing, etc. PCs were moving in the direction of a low-end gaming PC, maybe even a compact gaming PC in mini ITX or something like that. Could do what the Ouya did, just not for $100. But we know that building your own system is far from the only option there. You look at today, where people are taking $100 computers and putting graphics cards in them and converting them as retail conversions. There was some of that was still going on back in the early part of the 2010s. And when you're talking 1.7 gigahertz ARM Cortex-A9, to match that level of power wouldn't take very much for its PC equivalent. So Ouya has a lot of lessons to teach the console folks of today. So the hardware, first, don't skimp on hardware, obviously. Don't skimp on hardware. The hardware in the Ouya was already obsolete by the time this thing finally came out. So the hardware in the Ouya, there was already a better NVIDIA Tegra. There were better Android consoles by the time the Ouya hit the market. Better stuff was already out. So, hardware, it was supposed to be affordable and stuff, but it turned out to be a little too low end. And so the hardware was already, and also don't forget the hardware controllers. It's funny, there's a tie into controllers when I'm thinking about this today. And one of the reasons why we're here, whoa, light mode's too bright. One of the reasons why we're here is because of a little something related to these controllers. These controller things I've been talking about lately. The Ouya controller had some design problems that caused buttons to stick and things like that with the way you took the panels off to change the batteries and stuff like that. So there were problems with the Ouya controller as well. But it's kind of interesting that there's a tie-in with controllers versus one of the things that inspired me to have this discussion. So yeah, don't screw up the hardware. Don't screw up the hardware. Don't be like the tail that wags the dog. Don't be too easily replaceable. That's the biggie there. The criticism from the speech was, it's amazing how this CEO doesn't seem to know that a PC exists. PC already had a more open architecture with indie games, Steam, GOG, the whole 9 yards. In other words, don't pretend that some other competitor doesn't exist. And then And that's actually probably the main lesson from the Ouya. Then, of course, yeah, don't let supply chains screw everything up. There were problems with distribution and supply chain for getting pre-orders of the console out to people and other stuff as well. So literally everything the Ouya did wrong that led to its demise is a lesson for consoles of today. Don't fall too far behind on hardware. Keep your supply chain working properly so people can actually buy your stuff and get involved in your platform, and don't pretend that something else doesn't exist. The third one is the most important. The third one is probably the most important thing as we close this out in light mode and stuff. The third one is probably the most important thing. So I have Xbox controllers here. They've been very prominent in my chat streams lately because I'm having a blast getting back into controller games after playing keyboard mouse games like ESO for a couple of years, to the point where I was wondering if I was kind of losing my skill with controllers because I'm so used to keyboard mouse all the time. There was that night that I believe I was involved on Logan's stream playing Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U, and I was just all over the track. Not only was I out of practice on Mario Kart, I was out of practice with controllers because I was playing with a Switch Pro, with a Wii U Pro controller, excuse me. Stuff like that. I was totally out of practice on everything, including the hardware. And, you know, you have muscle memory that's in play with certain things. Then you just build new muscle memory by getting used to the hardware. It's not just about getting good at the games. It's about having a consistent setup that develops muscle memory and gets things down to just that, basically. So I have a bit of an advantage, for example, when playing certain games with a NES controller and a SNES controller. Don't have as much of an advantage with Xbox controllers because I keep taking all. It took me a long time to home in on Xbox controllers as a standard. So PC gaming, I started with the terrible PC controllers of the 2000s. Some of them were okay, but it was never a console quality controller. All the way through the Logitechs and everything that I use, and the Radio Shack one I had was worse than what the consoles had. So it wasn't until I got to 360 controllers, after finally figuring out why people did that and stuff like that. It wasn't until I started using 360 controllers that I started to, get what all of this is all about. Then the Xbox One controller had some technical advancements from the 360 controller, so I have two mint 360 wired controllers that I barely used that I could probably sell on Facebook Marketplace and do pretty decently with. They're wired 360 controllers that are mint because I barely used them. Not like the worn out actual, like the pearl colored console controllers that I see in a lot of the ads. These things are mint. They're blackout edition, or excuse me, they're dark mode, similar to the X-Bone controllers. I also have some X-Bone controllers, the boomerangs, that I used to use with the crew too, but those represented with PowerA and stuff. Those represented a completely different shape. The PowerA controllers of today are similar to the Xbox controllers of today, since they're now officially licensed. So muscle memory is now way more of a thing with Xbox controllers, and now the Series X controller is just way more refined with the textured grips and even textures on the triggers, things like that. Also the way the triggers move and the way you can move up and down with them and stuff, and the way everything feels, except for this pathetic hat switch for a cross key. I would much rather have, like, you know what? The ultimate Xbox controller for me would be Series X with all of its bells and whistles, but swap this thing for a rubberish Super Nintendo style cross key, similar to what's on the Wii U Pro controller or the Super Nintendo controller or something like that. I mean, there were generations of games on a cross key like this, except a little more grippy and rubbery than the plastic one on the X-Bone controllers. Put that on an Xbox controller and call it a day with the design. Of course, what about PlayStation? PlayStation's been bothering me lately. So, but anyways, yeah. So, don't repeat the mistakes of the Ouya, the big one being forgetting that PC exists. So my progression with controllers, now involves console controllers, which means the muscle memory I get playing PC games and getting used to these will carry over with me to the Xbox, and then I'll just, be at a disadvantage with PlayStation games unless these can hook up via Bluetooth to a PS5. Of course, as much as I originally wanted one of those plastic tacos we call PlayStation 5s, things have been happening since then that have changed all of that. I was wondering why Sony was suddenly getting snooty again. And then I heard about the CEO change and the leadership at Sony is a little bit more snooty than before and stuff along those lines. And next thing you know, we have PS5. We have PS5 being what it is. But the DualSense controller for the PS5 is mandatory for certain PS5 titles. So you can't do with the PlayStation what you can do with an Xbox, where, you have some Xbone controllers sitting around? Go ahead, use them. Go ahead, use them. There's just some small differences in the look and feel, and there's no share button, which why would anybody who's not player one want the share button anyways? So, you have those. And the thing is, what I like about Xbox in particular is they're addressing, I got to dig up the link for this because I was commenting on this years ago. They're addressing a criticism of consoles where literally they just add another button and now you have to buy all new controllers again, even though these still work perfectly fine. Long-running criticism of consoles. Long-running criticism of consoles. Addressed via Xbone to Xbox Series. Even though this controller is definitely more refined, way more solid, feels way more like something decent than something like this. I would still use something like this in a pinch or if I wanted a break from the Series controller. But it's definitely the Series controllers that I'm getting used to. And then this will be the standard, despite it being a wireless controller, because Bluetooth nubs are so inexpensive these days. This will be the standard for my computers. Maybe keep a PowerA wired controller around if there's a compatibility issue or something like that. But fundamentally, Xbox controllers are absolutely my controllers at this point when it comes to PC gaming. So, consoles shouldn't repeat the mistakes of the Ouya. Mistake number 3 is to act like some very important competitor doesn't exist. So Sony is getting a little snooty. I basically mentioned in a thread that I did on Twitter that I think they're trying to disguise consumer unfriendliness under the razzle-dazzle of new hardware. The PlayStation 5, the aesthetics, plastic taco. I want a blackout edition before I'll get one, Sony. I'm not buying your plastic taco that's going to yellow in 7 years or whatever. I don't buy light-colored consoles or anything anymore because we know plastic yellows. I have a yellow-bottomed Super Nintendo is a wonderful example of that. I don't want my PlayStation 5 to get like that if I get one. Thing is, though, snubbing the consumer by requiring DualSense for certain games on the console, that's a problem. So is Sony and the DMCA crap they're pulling with Sony Music on various YouTubers that I've been seeing. You have that going on. The thing is, and then of course, let's talk about supply chains. Let's talk about who's being friendly to consumers during this time period. If I want to buy a console right now, if I have nothing, I want to start gaming, and PC gaming is something I can't handle. What I'm going to do is I will go to Walmart or something, not even a specialty store like GameStop. Go to Walmart. What's there? Right now, the answer is the Nintendo Switch, the Nintendo OLED Switch, and the Xbox Series S. And the Series S, you get a nice solid controller like this. It does what, 1440p as the budget version of the two consoles. Doesn't have an optical drive, but is all digital, and it runs a lot of stuff off of Xbox Game Pass. The only problem I would have with that is versus PC, I got to pay for Xbox Live Gold on top of Game Pass or something like that. Really, it's time, Microsoft. Merge Xbox Live Gold benefits into the Game Pass for console players. Make it so that you don't need... Make it so that you can basically, make it all one service. So you don't have like this feeling of paying a second internet charge to get something that PC gamers get for free. Plus, it makes things a bit confusing. I had to do some digging to find out that I wouldn't have to get Xbox Live Gold to use Xbox Game Pass on PC. So, no, the restrictions are only on console, not on PC. Interesting. So, It'd be nice if I wasn't fiddling with these controllers so much. But yeah, so if I didn't get, they didn't merge Game Pass and go, oh yeah, Game Pass Ultimate, right? Shows how little I pay attention to the console version of Game Pass because I've got the PC one. Yeah, so, all right, yeah, okay, yeah, it is kind of together, though. It is kind of together in that respect. The thing is, though, look at what Microsoft offers with the Series S. Here's a box, plug it in, fire it up, play games. You know, and you get to try them out before you buy them. The Xbox Series S is the Ouya, gets right what the Ouya got wrong. There's a decent amount of hardware. Let's go over those three things again. The Ouya screwed up. It fell too far behind on hardware. The Series X and the Series S represent an about face by consoles in the face of rising competition from PC and mobile. So the consoles cost a little more, but the hardware is better. So I mentioned the discussions I had 10 years ago was the end of the PS3, Xbox 360 era. We were hoping the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 would represent at least the ability to do 1080 60 like us PC gamers were starting to do at the time, especially when we're talking a couple more years when they would come out from when we first heard about them. Or from when all that was going on. That didn't happen, especially with the Xbox One and its DRM crippled Betamax Connect, mandatory Connect original release. That got fixed with the Xbox One S and eventually the Xbox One X, as well as the PlayStation 4, PS4 Pro. So there was finally what we were looking for, the second half of that console generation. There was the second half of the console generation finally got it right. But that was the world that we lived in at the time. Now today, move forward to today, the Series X and the Series S are the about face, moving things forward even more on hardware and realizing that, PC gaming is something that people can find out about. So what do you do about it? Xbox decided, okay, we're going to be friendly with them like it's a neighbor. Sony, who knows? So let's go over the three ways that the Ouya screwed up. The hardware fell too far behind. The Series S has competitive hardware at made for 1440p. So, second, supply chains. Don't let supply chains screw up people's ability to get into your platform. The Ouya did that. The Series S is one of the consoles you can actually get. And it's one of the consoles that people are actually getting. 3, don't act like something doesn't exist that's a major competitor, like PC gaming. Controllers work on Windows as well as on Xbox. Xbox Game Pass for PC. Enough said. So you'll buy a box, hook it up to your TV, and you'll have games to play. Cool. And you get to pick which ones you want, use them on the Game Pass until they get taken off Game Pass, then buy them at a discount, similar to a digital version of GameFly. And, or just buy from a digital storefront, use it as a Steam box, essentially. And Microsoft has had a more robust commitment to backward compatibility versus Sony, who pretty much abandoned it after the PS2. There was the original PS3s with certain, and it was taken out. So, is there something maybe something with the stores on PS4, stuff like that? But I think Xbox has got this more refined because, again, rule number 3. Don't ignore competition that gets something right. PC has backward compatibility. Steam, GOG, getting CD games working, things like that. Rule 3. Steam, GOG, PC games, etc. So you see what's going on here, right? And I say this because PlayStation, we talk about these are Xbox controllers, right? Why do I use these and not the DualSense? I hear the DualSense is a great controller. I hear the PS4 controller was pretty nice too. There is no official drivers of any sort. You can use Steam to configure it as a controller. You can use config files on Steam. You can use apps, or you can use various programs and stuff. There's something that translates the DualSense over to working with Windows and stuff. There's extras, while this just works. That's the difference. Then so between that And of course, with Sony requiring DualSense, even if you have old controllers around, unlike Xbox, Sony getting all in on this kind of stuff. You got to ask yourself, nope, smartphone stand can't hold one of these upright. Let's try it off camera. You got to ask yourself, though, who's got it right? Who's got it right in an environment where there's all these stupid little gotchas, and then the same company that gives you your games can DMCA you on YouTube or something because different views on copyright between the various cultures involved. Then there's Nintendo. And Nintendo is one of the big reasons why I'm a PC gamer, because they couldn't get this right either. The main reason I still have my Wii U and haven't gotten a Nintendo Switch is because the Nintendo Switch still lacks a little something the Wii U had, the Virtual Console. There's a subscription service similar to Game Pass with Nintendo Switch Online these days, and there's multiple tiers which unlock N64 now? Seriously? So pay a subscription fee to access old games versus collecting them retro or emulation. And then take the one console that got it right, the Wii U, and discontinue 1080p Virtual Console through the Nintendo eShop. You could use it as a Steam box, essentially, for Nintendo games. Shut down the shop. Wii U, 3DS, shops shut down, and people were furious. There you go. Nintendo can't get it right either. This is one of the reasons why we're having this discussion today. You have Nintendo. The Switch still is not a one-for-one replacement for the Wii U in that respect. Consumers are betrayed because the virtual games they purchased on the Wii, they could pay a discount to get on the Wii U. No way to bring this forward on the Switch that I know of. Then what? Then there's Sony with Sony has gotchas, Nintendo has gotchas, Xbox has Game Pass. And it extends over to PC as well. What does PC have? PC has Steam, GOG, platforms that have been around for decades. The Epic Game Store, EA has Origin, etc. But there's deals here and there to cross-platform everything. They have the Xbox app, which replaced Universal Windows platform and stuff. There are services where your digital games actually will have some longevity because it's PC and not a console. The Steam model. Digital games managed DRM-wise through Steam. Been around for decades. Steam was originally a 2000s thing. I remember people having problems with, I think, Morrowind or Oblivion on Steam because they were different than the box versions of the game. There were some differences. Some mods wouldn't work, things like that. I remember hearing about Steam. Then I was very angry in 2011 when I was forced to use Steam in order to play Skyrim. Then I used Steam and liked it. The rest is history. But bottom line of all of this is that Steam's been around for a long time. Good Old Games GOG is committed to DRM-free stuff. They also have a lot of older stuff on there. And if you buy a DOS game from them, because you don't have the original version or whatever, you get a version of DOSBox that's tuned to that game as part of the download. So if you want to play old games on GOG, you'll actually get a pre-tuned copy of DOSBox as part of the game when you go to download it. So that's giving a darn about your customers. And then there's the longevity of it all. Where is the longevity? PC is PC. Steam and GOG, they might sell their assets to something else, to somewhere else, etc. But by that time, they'll have been around for decades versus the lifespan of the Wii U. You know? Wondering whether backward compatibility will continue being a thing with PlayStation? How about Xbox, where there really isn't such... Xbox does this too, by the way, where there really isn't such thing as a physical copy of the game. The CDs you buy are basically keys that allow for the downloads. what happens when that gets pulled for whatever reason, or the game gets retconned, or it gets patched like Forza with the censored music patches and stuff like that, or it gets pulled from storefronts because of expiring licenses like Forza Horizon 3. The longevity and the feeling of ownership isn't as fleshed out on the consoles as it is on the PC. And that is one of the key reasons why I'm a PC gamer. And to bridge the gap with consoles, I'm going to use console controllers. So the only real difference in my experience with these games, unless I get a lousy PC port, of course, the only real difference between these games is the box that's doing all the work. Except this box that's doing all the work is one that I designed myself, can upgrade myself, can repair and maintain myself. Don't have to ship it out if it breaks. I have hardware that I can swap in from my other systems if the graphics card fries or something like that. It won't be that hard to get this Windows 10 system back up and running if something goes wrong. Versus console. I don't pay for an Xbox Live Gold type service like I would on console. And so you see, with these ongoing situations where consoles repeat one of the key mistakes of the Ouya by parading about as though PCs don't exist, it creates this dichotomy where I want to play games on PC first. And at some point, considering what's been going on with consoles, or considering what's been going on lately, you know, I always ask, here's the thing though, even console exclusivity goes away. How many, you know, formerly console exclusive games now have PC versions on Steam? Now, or maybe there's some kind of agreement that a rights holder has that brings games over to Steam. Like, for example, what's available now from Square Enix on Steam. Final Fantasy to your heart's content. You just might want to get a retro controller instead of using this hat switch for a D-pad, or just go up and down, use an analog stick for an old game if you can stomach that. Yeah, PC first. The only reason I even think about getting any Nintendo box is to play Nintendo games, at least until Nintendo has their Dreamcast moment and realizes that they're avoiding the inevitable by not letting people play Mario games on better hardware than what Nintendo has been behind on for the last couple of decades. There's people out there, they're making hack job versions of Mario 64 at 60 frames per second, or even remake versions of Mario 64 at 60 frames a second. They're working with stuff like that. There's emulators where they can put the game disc inside their PC and it plays on PC with certain platforms, and people play like PS2 or other games highly, highly improved over the original hardware. Now, then there's Famiclones. And there's even things like the Evercade that I was looking at today, with arcade and console games from various classics that are on multi-carts and stuff like that are officially licensed. And you can use Bluetooth controllers with them. So anything you have on Bluetooth can work with the Evercade, and you can play at 1080p with a whole bunch of bells and whistles. I was watching Metal Jesus' video on this retro console that's out there nowadays. So it's a supply and demand as usual. Now, unmet market demand means people find ways to get that market demand met. And in my case, PC, since it is now a force to be reckoned with as opposed to the joke that PC gaming was 20 years ago. Since PC is a force to be reckoned with and takes the same controllers as console, stuff like that, and you can rig a PC to operate like a console if you really want that console experience with some kind of dashboard system like Steam Big Picture Mode or something like that. If you want a controller-based computer experience, I mean, I can do that with Steam right now. Turn on Xbox controller support in Steam, and you can use the thumbsticks to move the cursor in Windows and click on things, unless you just go to Big Picture Mode. You know, there's a lot of conversations that I had in the early part of the last decade that I need to revisit in this decade. It's not just about consoles and whether they had a future, or about the Ouya like what we're doing tonight, but also Gabe Newell had a very, very forward-looking speech at some convention that I could probably revisit. It's what inspired early Wacky World of MultimediaJay when I was experimenting with in-home streaming, because Gabe Newell tossed around the idea that you could stream on your home network and not get any latency. So why wouldn't you use it for something like that? Like, for example, playing mobile games on a big screen or a Steam game going to the living room. I'd say he had a point, but that's worth its own discussion as well. PC gaming is a monster these days. It's definitely worth getting into as a primary platform. The difference is that instead of buying new consoles, you're buying hardware upgrades. Now, I have tossed around the idea for building a new system this year for sentimental reasons. But nothing is stopping me from just taking out the motherboard and just keeping the case that I have right now and just plug everything into some new motherboard with a new processor, reformat all the drives, and basically move forward. And eventually, you know, when a couple upgrades from now, put my current monolith system back together into 2010's monolith and reinstall Windows 10. Especially with SSDs. I've been using SSDs since 2011. Almost all of them still work. I hit the problem of too many SSDs. And let me go check Newegg real quickly. One of the things that I observed was that storage prices were one of the few forms of PC hardware that wasn't affected by a lot of the crap that's going on for whatever reason. Like, that's huge. And I take it out from like 200%. Let me look up 1 terabyte SSD. So remember, my traditional price for 1 terabyte drives, $70 before the Thailand floods, cleared the $100 mark. There's an M2 for $61. It's on sale from some off-brand. The Intel 670p series, M2 2280, 1 terabyte PCIe, NVMe, the whole 9 yards. I hit F11. Darn it, Chrome, $84. $84. So the price of Samsung 870 EVO, 2 terabytes for $189. I paid $170 for 160 gigabytes in 2011. Now I could replace my games drive, my 2 terabyte games drive, with a solid state drive for $189. Another design thing I'm thinking about is getting rid of dismantling the array that I use for data and just putting the second drive in an enclosure and then having a plug-in drive that I turn on and off whenever I want to back up the system through USB 3. Don't have 2 drives, one of which is always just a clone of the other, like a JBOD RAID type setup that I use a sync program to back everything up on. I do have switching drive enclosures that I could use, or I could use get a 2.5 inch hard drive that'll run off of one power cord, put it inside one of those hard drive cases I have sitting around. Use that as a plug-in drive for backing things up. That would free up a drive internally for me to have more storage space for games if I want to have more SSDs in this thing. So, storage, baby. These are Newegg prices. Who knows what Amazon's highly aggressive. Let me see what we have on Amazon for a 1 TB SSD. SanDisk SSD Plus non-M2, 1 terabyte internal SSD, $74.99. Samsung Evo is $114. That's always higher anyways, but Western Digital, under $100 for 1 terabyte SSDs, serial ATA ones though. So you have like 6 of them on the motherboards I use. Imagine 6 terabytes of games running on SSDs at 600 megabits a second, max transfer, about 500 something. Most of the ones I have are like 530 or so because the bus got maxed out. Ooh, Samsung 980 EVO SSD NVMe, $99.99. And if you have an extra NVMe drive, there are enclosures that convert it over. So, yeah. Here's a Chinese brand, Fangshang, $60 for 1 terabyte. They're new. I don't recognize them. They must be new to the market. PNY, 1 terabyte, $70 for a serial ATA SSD. Crucial MX 500 is $100 for 1 terabyte, etc. There's a portable SSD from SanDisk, 1 terabyte, extreme portable, and it's USB-C up to 1,000 megabits per second transfer, so roughly double that of a serial ATA. slower than an internal bolted straight to your board. Silicon power 1 terabyte NVMe, $70. So this, I'm tempted to just buy, I think there's serial ATA adapters that you can actually bolt inside your system. So you can basically take an M2, convert to serial ATA, and plug it into a serial ATA port. I got to take a look at some of those. There's little controller boards that'll do that. Oh yeah, the SanDisk one's up to 530 megabytes a second. So storage, one of the few parts of PC building not really affected all that much by the price gouging that's going on. At least if you're like me and you've been around this long enough to remember $70 hard drives that shot up to $120 around the time of the Thailand floods for a terabyte. So things have come down since then, and of course the hard drive industry has had to react to the rise of solid state storage and stuff along those lines. But yeah. Whoa, don't turn this thing on. I don't want to play anything right now. Might have to pop the battery if that's the case. Storage then. Yeah, PC gaming is a beast. Of course I'm going to do PC gaming first. PC gaming is an absolute monster. Of course I'm going to do PC gaming first as a primary platform. I have a lot of options if something goes wrong. Even if there's a lightning strike that destroys this machine. Heck, I'll bring over one of the Delosauruses, you know? I'll go shopping. I'll put something together. I'll do a retail conversion. PCs are something you get into, and it turns into an upgrade path as instead of buying new consoles. So you might want to run the numbers and be smart with your money. Also, don't forget a parts market. Sell PC parts on like Facebook or something like that. Of course, people can sell an Xbox for that too. So, you know, things along those lines. But as you upgrade and as you get better and as you get more horsepower under the hood and as you get better controllers and stuff, you can sell off your old stuff piecemeal to other hobbyists in your area. But PC gaming is an absolute monster. It uses the same controllers as consoles, has more options than consoles if you know what you're doing. And there are some distinct advantages like Steam Summer Sale, Xbox Game Pass for PC, costing less than the console version, not having to pay for Xbox Live. Indigestion, whatever. Not having to pay for that kind of, at least I didn't hear any fireworks going off. We had fireworks earlier tonight. Looks like the neighborhood's finally settled down. Woo! It's also late enough for somebody to call the cops on somebody if they're blasting bottle rockets in their backyard. So, yeah. Consoles. I recognize that consoles need to get their ass in gear with some of this stuff. But yeah, 3 main mistakes of the Ouya. Don't fall too far behind on hardware. Make sure your supply chains work so people can actually get your stuff and get into your ecosystem, and don't pretend that PCs don't exist or some other competitor that is more open and is already successful and has been successful. The Steam GOG digital games model, plus add an optical drive to get disc games involved and stuff like that. Backward compatibility, the whole 9 yards. It exists on PC. It has been a thing on PC for a very long time. And at this point, Steam is decades old, people. Steam is decades old. There is no excuse for the console companies, especially Sony and Nintendo, to not take notice of this. What they don't want to do exists, it works, it has worked, and people like it, and they spend money on it. Stop pretending it doesn't exist. And then there's mobile. Let's just throw in a nice little honorable mention for mobile before we look at stuff in the chat and also in the comments to round out the discussions tonight. Let's talk about mobile for a second. These controllers work with Android. They're Bluetooth. I'm wondering when we're going to see, I realize Android TV is a thing, but your TV as a mobile device, or having enough portable hardware and a system on a chip to basically be either a Windows or an Android device and run games right on the TV at 1080p. What's holding us back on that one? I mean, I'd already like to see a system on a chip like an AMD APU or something that can do 1080-60 without a graphics card. So the next time there's these infamous graphics card shortages and our graphics card fries, we go from 4K to 1080 until we can get another graphics card. Not hard. It would destroy the market for a bunch of low-end graphics cards, but Why not? No. Why not? Consoles have systems on a chip, and they do fine. And they just got better with the Series X and the PS5. Why not? Seriously. But mobile, just because computer use and gaming is a different thing in China than it is here in the West, doesn't mean that Western companies need to cede mobile gaming to that microtransaction strangled model. Diablo Immortal. Can you imagine, and this is something I was looking forward to 10 years ago, when I wondered if smartphones could eventually get the oomph to replace a console, if they could cast to the TV, to a TV or something. They could already use controllers and stuff with Bluetooth, but I was throwing around ideas 10 years ago of smartphones and tablets making consoles obsolete. That was before the Xbox One and the Xbox Series and stuff like that. And all the stuff that's been going on since then. But mobile is criminally treated badly as a platform. A lot of people, oh, why do I want to play video games on my little 5-inch screen? Mobile isn't just smartphones. It's your smart TVs as well. It's the ability to cast to a bigger screen when you're home and not need a separate device for entry-level gaming. Why does why does mobile have to continue being the joke that it is? Something to think about. I have a PC off to the side right over there, off screen. What if I, put a phone there? What if I got a phone that was powerful enough to give me an Xbox 360 experience and nothing else was working at the time? Do I really need to settle for a little 5-inch screen? Put it on this thing. There's TVs coming out with processors and SoCs and Android TVs and stuff like that. At what point will we be able to run Android games directly on a TV if we're not there already? The Samsung I got's from 2019. What about the newer stuff that's coming out? So, all that lovely stuff. Good old mobile. PC would actually have more competition if mobile ever got its stuff together, especially with the way flagship phones are getting, especially flagship secondhand flagship phones. Digital cameras fell by the wayside in the last couple of years because smartphone cameras got so good and they got standardized enough, particularly with USB-C, that streamers and YouTubers some of them will buy phones for making videos in lieu of buying an actual camera. Now, you can still use real cameras, of course, but how much better do smartphones have to get before we start looking at that sort of thing? To where smartphones are so useful, you just deliberately buy a smartphone just to make videos with. It's there and whatnot, and it's a perfect replacement for higher-end stuff, especially if you're just doing 1080p videos. That's kind of the system on a chip thing I'm looking for 1080p gaming. So yeah, PC gaming's cool and all, but it should have the enthusiast angle to it in that respect. So yeah, PC, force to be reckoned with. Console companies take notice. Know why the Ouya failed. The top 3 reasons, and act on it. Do things differently and do things better. Now, let's go over some chat and some comments here. Heard of the Ouya, did merge Game Pass and Gold, it's called Game Pass Ultimate. Can't win for losing sometimes, etc. Monolith, otherwise known as the Beast. Yeah, 2016. The only real reason for me to build a new computer this year is sentimental value. Like, oh, I built a new computer 20 years after my first one. That's not a very good reason. I may just skip it entirely and just go with upgrades instead. Upgrades to storage, upgrades to the graphics card. Maybe, before the NVIDIA 4 grand cards start coming out and we get the shortages again, like I correctly predicted with 2s to 3s, I should buy a 3060, get something better for my system and before we run into graphics card crap again, which has been predictable the last 2 times, stuff like that. I mean, I predicted it right before the pandemic, so we have that to consider as well. But yeah, that kind of stuff. So yeah, let's see here. But I mean, Monolith has definitely gone the distance. There's really not much wrong with it. it's hitting the limit on some resource. But sometimes with ESO, it hits the limit on GPU, which does the encoding. So a beefier GPU might free up more resources. I'm not really looking at being CPU limited with the Skylake i7 yet. Most of the reason why I'm even thinking of going to another system right now is because of Windows 11. But who knows if Windows 10 won't become the new XP and people won't want to give it up when it goes EOL. Just like what happened with XP. Microsoft has another winner on their hands with Windows 10. This is perfectly fine for a lot of things. And Windows 11's been floundering in certain performance areas and things like that recently. So I got to check it out, though. Put it on Nerdova or something. Yeah, Monolith. Yeah, I could also upgrade to SSDs, get more of the hard drives out of my system. And go to, especially with those 2 terabyte ones costing what they do. Maybe I should find a way to make some extra money somehow and go get that stuff. I mean, I did buy a PS3 when I wasn't in good shape money-wise, just to say, hell with it. It is what it is. Could always just reprise that for something like this. But got the series controller, things like that. The thing with SSDs, though, is that when your throughput goes up, so does your CPU usage, because the data comes at the processor faster and has to handle it more. So every call for data is now going to be faster, and the processor's going to have to keep up with it a bit more versus if it was throttled or something under the old way. But let's see here. I just found out that I can upgrade my 1st gen Ryzen to a 5th or 5th gen Ryzen with just a BIOS update, and the motherboard is 5 years old. That's kind of wild. Yeah, it is. The only issue would be if there was a new PCIe standard that might limit the graphics card on the old Ryzen system. But yeah, why not? You know, upgrade it. Get some more years out of it. That's part of one of the good things about Ryzen is that, you know, you can max out your motherboard. You can actually max out your motherboard now. It's not just about maxing out your processor or your graphics card before moving up to something. Steve here. I found out that my motherboard works with Ivy Bridge as well as Sandy Bridge processors. The two of them are kind of related to each other in that respect. And then Haswell was the talk that changed the architecture afterwards. We took a look at that with regards to the Toasty Bros and some of their latest Delosaurus experiments. Windows 11's a resource hog. It also has memory leakage. Oh, cool. Another Vista. Just what we want. Didn't I call that? Didn't I call it Windows 11 would be the new Vista? Every other version of Windows, Vista sucks. They got it right for 7. 8 sucks. They got it right for 10. Here's 11. Wake me up when Windows 12 comes out. 11:49 at the Geek House. 11:49 at the Geek House. The last round of laundry might be done by now, and the neighborhood seems to have quieted down. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to get everything ready for some Forza. We'll see how the sound was on this first and compare it to the last chat stream. Take a little bit of a break, and then sometime after midnight, we'll start hooning around in Forza, making some progress in that game, because Logan589XP in particular, if he's been playing Forza recently, will notice that I've been getting past some of his best records for like speed traps and danger sign jumps and stuff like that. I've been kind of, now that I'm VIP, I got some more in-game money coming in, been making some progress on that, and I'm now at the point where I want to go live and stream the progress on certain cars that I want to turn into off-road monsters and stuff like that. I would dare say at this point that especially since getting the series controller, especially since getting the Xbox controllers fixed up, that I'm having more fun in Forza than I was having in ESO. Of course, you got the card game and all the crap that happened with High Isle. I'll go back and play it at some point, probably as a way of relaxing or something. But Forza, man, finally got Forza working, and it's as sandboxy as any RPG that I play. By the way, if any of you folks want to check out my inspiration for some of the hooning around that I do in Forza, Roadkill on the Motor Trend channel on YouTube. Big inspiration. Freiberger and Finnegan. It's paywalled on Motor Trend on demand nowadays, but the kind of stuff they do, not only an inspiration for what I'm doing with Forza, also an inspiration for what I do with the tech videos. If you haven't seen any of their stuff yet, go check out, I might just make a playlist of Roadkill episodes. Go check the Motor Trend channel, check out the Roadkill playlist. I want to put them in chronological order from oldest to newest, though, for a binge watchers playlist. So I watched the heck out of Roadkill. Yeah, the fun part about cars and computers is that you have this common thread of, it's moving parts and mechanical stuff, but there's this thing about there's this thing about tinkering with stuff and knowing how things go. So, Logan, I've been going back to Forza Horizon 4 and working on that some more, but I did tune in the last Forza stream and saw you breaking some of my records. Yeah, I'm kind of getting the hang of it. Plus, the Series controller is so much more solid than the X-Bone controller, and I fixed the sticking triggers in the X-Bone controllers too. So, the thing is, what would be really cool, we could both stream it on YouTube and give the algorithm something to munch on and see what they get for views and stuff. Because YouTube streaming, I've been keeping an eye on some streamers that came over from Twitch. They're even big streamers that are really not growing on YouTube. Same rules apply. You know, things can get kind of random sometimes with the algorithms, but I was surprised by the Ninja Turtles one getting 150 views, but that was a stream. The big issue, and this is a topic for a multimedia meta discussion at some point, the platform doesn't matter. Well, the platform matters in terms of size. That's about it. And whether you can get an audience and the audience ratios. But other than that, though, there's also a lot that people aren't talking about with live streaming in particular that puts it at a disadvantage. It's not just because Twitch has trained people to not watch VODs. But yeah, I do have a lot of stuff to do in Forza Horizon 4 as well. There's a lot of stories like the Top Gear stuff that came out that I never got around to doing. But I'm definitely going to go back to 4 once I get more established in 5 and just Forza it up for a bit. I want to 100% complete these games, but at the same time, I want to check out the other stuff on Game Pass. I got a lot of stuff downloaded. I have a backlog now just in Game Pass. Never mind Steam, never mind the consoles, never mind the stuff that's been a decoration on that shelf back there for years. Yeah, that's the games back there. The movies are on the other side. So, Wii games, etc. So have you ever played the game My Summer Car? Nah, I never heard of it. Is it related to, work somewhere and then buy a junky car or something for $500 and fix it up like the cheap truck challenge? I don't know. Sad too, though, because you know what the biggest waste of money is for these car games? The Crew 2. I picked that up before Forza Horizon 4 came out because it sounded cool with the cars, boats, and planes. It hasn't worked out. It has updates and stuff. I just can't really get myself to really pay too much attention to that game and give it a lot of attention and stuff like that. That's what, I also have Project Cars 2 that I got on a Steam sale that I just started up for the first time the other day. It's more of a simulation game, though, like Gran Turismo. 11:54 at the Geek House. Let's get ready for some Forza. Yeah. Let's get ready for some Forza. We got some progression to make. There's some cars that I want to work on stream. We're going to work on them. But first, we finish the chores. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay signing off. Thanks for stopping by. And next time will actually be probably less than an hour.